Good afternoon, everyone. And we are back with Passion for Tennessee Talks. And it's Robin Kimbrough Hayes. And this is after the campaign. And this is a conversation that had started during the campaign and wanted to keep conversations going even after the Senate race so that we can engage people around the state to talk about their passion for Tennessee. Everyone's been asking, Robin, are you running again? Stay tuned. I will be back in 2022. But right now, we want to help Marquita Bradshaw to flip 10, and we want to keep conversations going about passion for Tennessee and how we can make our state better as we move forward. Today, I'm excited to have with us Greta McLean. She is the founder of Silent No Longer. And I had the honor to meet Greta on the campaign journey. And I met so many wonderful people and still staying in contact with them because I have passion for Tennessee. Well, Greta and I connected not only through the campaign, but on a very important issue, and that is sexual violence. So Silent No Longer is a budding grassroots organization, and I'm going to let Greta tell you more about it, advocating for sexual assault victims. And of course, my background, I worked for as the legal counsel for the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. And so this is definitely my wheelhouse. And many of you don't know that I have a budding nonprofit called the National Interfaith Alliance to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, which addresses faith and how it relates to issues of domestic and sexual violence. So, but today we're going to hear from Greta McLean. So welcome. How are you doing today, Greta?
Doing good. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. We want to make sure here at Passion for Tennessee Talks that people become aware of different organizations. So you're the founder of Silent No Longer. Tell us a little bit about the mission and what Silent No Longer is all about.
The mission is to support, empower, and advocate for sexual assault survivors through a variety of different ways. One is creating safe spaces for survivors to share their stories and to provide not only survivors, but allies and advocates skills needed to help support each other, to do community organizing, whether it's around topics of sexual violence, racism, or something else, and to spread awareness and help dismantle the stereotypes and systematic causes of sexual violence.
And this question is not up here, but can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts about the systematic causes of sexual violence?
Honestly, it's one of those things where I think for centuries we have put out mixed messages, and that some of those messages continue to be reinforced, and we haven't taken opportunity to address that. One of the things is how we treat our children. There's still a lot of people who, well, if you're a little girl, then you should wear dresses and pink. And if you're a little boy, you can get dirty and, wear blue and things like that. And, well, you should play with dolls. You should play baseball, things like that. And it's actually something that's pretty simple, in my opinion, at least, to fix. Starting at an early age, just tell kids, you know what, you may look a little different, but you're still just people. And, whether you're a little boy or a little girl, you can do anything you want to. It doesn't matter, what your gender or what you look like. And if we start that early enough in our homes, the parents, and in our schools as well, coaches, then we can start eroding those stereotypes and start building more respect. Sexual violence is about power and control. It's not about sexual urges. And if we start, and over a couple generations, kids grow up respecting each other, then hopefully we're never going to end sexual violence. But if we can start building that respect and that understanding, I think that we can greatly reduce it.
I think you have made some very good points here. And one of the main points that I'm glad that you stated was that sexual violence is about power and control.
Yes.
It's about taking control over somebody who's vulnerable, for just to exercise power over them in a violent way.
Yes.
I want to share some statistics here about sexual violence. So on average, there are 648,000 victims, ages 12 and older, every year in the United States. So this is an alarming statistics. 90% of adult rape victims are female. So, but this does not mean that sexual assault does not impact males. In fact, 1 in 6 boys will be victims of sexual assault before the age of 13, and 1 out of every 10 rape victims are male. This issue especially affects the trans community as well. So we need to understand that the sexual assault is about power and control. It has a greater impact on women, but it does affect people from all segments. It affects males and affects people who are trans, lesbian, gay, or queer. So this is an issue that must be addressed, and we must address it in a very effective manner with policies, laws, and grassroots advocacy, like Greta is doing with Silent No Longer. I'm really excited about the work that she does with Silent No Longer. Speaking of which, what motivated you to do this? Like, I wanted to found NIA DSV, the National Institute Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, because I'm very big on issues of faith and its intersection with sexual violence, and saw that this was something missing when we're addressing these issues. So tell me, what motivated you to found Silent No Longer?
And if I may, I definitely want to answer that, but can I mention something about one of the statistics?
Sure.
You were talking about well over 400,000 a year. The thing that in doing some research is, we hear a lot about gun violence epidemic and the opioid epidemic. And those are certainly very real problems that desperately need to be addressed. I'm not dismissing them. But when you look at the statistics, there are far more sexual assaults than there are gun violence deaths and opioid deaths. Again, those two topics are very important, but I find it interesting and disappointing that there isn't more outcry and more talk about the epidemic of sexual violence. So thank you for allowing me to say that.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add that when we talk about gun violence, we have to talk about sexual violence and domestic violence, because oftentimes firearms are involved with taking power and control away from the victim.
Right.
And when it becomes more difficult to take power and control, the violence has to escalate, and often it's the use of firearms. This is why Tennessee is number 4, at least the last statistic I saw, ranked in women who are murdered by their intimate partners. Thank you. Now, yeah, we're both passionate about this issue, and so I want us to have some dialogue and exchange on this issue. So this clearly is your passion. So tell us why you found it Silent No Longer.
It's kind of a interesting or unique maybe story, but in July of 2016, I was sexually assaulted. And as most sexual assault survivors, you have good days and bad days. And excuse me, my dog is throwing a fit right now. Had good days and bad days, and had started slowly going into a pretty deep depression. to the point where I was actually had come to the point one night where I was writing my goodbye letters. And I was having difficulty with the last one, putting into words exactly what I wanted to say. So I set it aside for a second, and I don't know why, but decided to log on to Facebook. And when I got in, I kept seeing this little hashtag called Me Too. And it sounds like a fairy tale or very corny, I know, but when I started realizing what it meant and seeing how many people were saying it, it kind of made me stop and think. And it's like, well, all these friends of mine and strangers, have gone through similar what I have, and they've managed to find a way to, be strong and keep taking it one day at a time, putting one step in front of the other. So I figured, well, then I'm going to do that. And I also realized that if it hadn't been for all those people having the courage to, in such a public forum, saying, this happened to me, that I wouldn't be here today. So I decided in February of 2017 to start this grassroots organization to help other people the way I was helped, to give them an outlet, let them know that they're not alone, and, let them find the power of their voice.
Wow, what a powerful story. I am so glad that you tuned into Facebook. And I'm so glad there was a hashtag Me Too. And people do not realize the impact of sexual assault on victims. When you talk about guilt, shame, worth, the list goes on, and replaying the story in your head in a way that the act is, right? That's sexual assault wants to take power away from you.
Right.
And you survivors spend a journey of reclaiming that power in so many ways. And I am so glad that you reclaimed it with Silent No Longer, and that you're helping other people, women and men, right?
Yes.
To reclaim their voice and their worth, and to reclaim all of what sexual assault takes away from a person. And this is why sexual assault victims do not report. This is why sexual assault victims remain silent. Oftentimes they're not believed. This is why law enforcement cannot force a sexual assault victim to take a lie detector test, because that's what happened. Victims come in and say, I've been sexually assaulted. Police officers force them to take a lie detector test. And it just messes up the whole process. Why should I go and report it? Nobody's going to believe me. And all the other complexities with that, with the guilt and the shame, as we have pointed out. Greta, I'd like to hear from you. You're a survivor of sexual assault. You're working with Silent No Longer. You work with victims all the time. How can we make it easier for victims to be silent no longer?
I think the biggest thing is to believe them. It sounds simple, but it's not. Sometimes for some people, I'm one of the statistics as far as people who thought that they wouldn't be believed, and I didn't report it. I'm a former law enforcement officer, and it never occurred to me that even a former officer could be sexually assaulted. And I figured, if I didn't believe it could happen, why would someone else? So I think the biggest thing is to believe survivors. There's still a lot of falsehoods or myths out there about how many people make up allegations or false reports. But in reality, Bureau of Justice Statistics says only about 24% of sexual assaults are even reported to law enforcement. And of that small amount, of that 24%, anywhere between 2 to 8% are considered not credible. So the vast majority of them that are reported are credible. And then there's all those of people who don't even report it because they're scared they won't be believed. The biggest thing is to believe them, listen to them. Victims will tell their story as they can, when they can. If they're not giving you the whole story, it's not because they're making it up. It's just what they've been through. As anybody with any type of trauma, you share what you can when you can. And to not try to tell people what they should do. You know, if the person doesn't want to report it, don't try to force them. That's
Right.
going to make them shut down. Just
Right.
support their decisions, and be there and listen. That's the biggest thing.
That is so important. This is why we have laws in the books here in Tennessee that says health providers are not required to report sexual assaults or domestic assaults, because we want victim-centered treatment and care. Reporting may endanger the victim even more. And I believe that statistics will show that most sexual assault victims, perpetrators, are people that they know in some fashion. And so this creates other dynamics. How the shame around reporting somebody that you know has hurt you in this fashion. So victims do recant. It doesn't mean that they're not telling the truth. This is Greta was saying, it's all a part of the trauma that is involved with sexual assault. But I'm not going to go down that road too much, because Greta and the sexual assault center therapists are the experts in that area. I might tell you about a law or two, but that's pretty much all I can do on that. Great, wonderful, wonderful. Speaking of which, how do you work with the Sexual Assault Center? So before you go there, the Sexual Assault Center is here in Nashville, and it is a one-stop shop for sexual assault victims. So they offer an advocate, therapy there, and other services for sexual assault victims. So tell me a little bit how you work with the Sexual Assault Center.
Primarily, they provide a lot of direct services, like you said. They coordinate the SANE nurses, the forensic nurses who do the medical legal exams. They provide the support groups, counseling. I think they have, I'm not sure how many, but licensed clinical social workers and counselors. So we don't do all that. We don't have the social workers. We do our advocacy as fellow survivors, just helping people walk through the process and help them through that. So we count on them anytime we're having an event where there may be triggers or something. We will contact them and, hey, could you have someone there just in case, something is out of our experience and more than we can handle. Because our primary concern is helping survivors be safe.
Right.
We count on them a lot anytime we're doing any type of trainings or public events, especially this year with Zoom. It's a lot easier to get people in sometimes. So some of the things we've had, some of their people come in as experts to help us in areas that we didn't have the extensive knowledge. So we count on them quite a bit. And we hope as we develop more programs to be able to partner with them even more so that they can make referrals to us for things that they don't have. So
yeah, they are
partnership.
Great. They are a one-stop shop. So if you are interested in their services, their number is 615-259-9055. So they have wonderful services there. Lately, your organization has been in the news. Silent no longer. You all have been really working hard. I was there at the People's Plaza when victim stories were shared relating to sexual harassment and assault in the Metro Police Department. Can you share more?
Yes, ma'am. Back in April, was the first woman. Well, we had a couple in April, but the one that actually really talked to us in depth. She is, excuse me. She was a former officer who was sexually assaulted by her supervisor, her captain. And from there, it's just kind of grown. Her story, then a few other people after that came forward. Like I said, a person before that had come forward, but ended up not following through with everything. So there's a lot, we didn't have a whole lot of information to help her. But we ended up putting out a survey aimed at employees with the department and had several more people come forward. We're up to 36 right now. 3 of them we have not done intakes on yet, so we don't know the exact situation. But so far, all the allegations have either been sexual assault, sexual harassment, gender discrimination, racial discrimination, or retaliation. The mayor did contact the attorney general here in Nashville, the district attorney general, and they referred the criminal cases to the TBI. Right now, only one of the women has been willing to speak with the TBI. We are still very much working with the others who we have information on. The survey people could remain anonymous. We wanted them to feel safe, but we wanted to kind of gauge how big of a problem it was. So we don't have contact for all of them, but the ones that we do, we're still encouraging them, trying to find them resources that can help them, whether it's therapy, counselors, or if they're afraid of retaliation, making referrals to attorneys so that they feel safe going public. As far as the harassment and some of the other stuff, what we're looking at, Nashville actually sits in a very unique position right now and have a very unique opportunity. As we all know, racism and racial bias in law enforcement and the judicial system is big right now, and it should be. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed. And we have had allegations of racism within the Metro Police Department. And I really applaud Mayor Cooper for announcing the Police Policy Commission to help look at some of these things, to create more diversity in the department, and having that commission, do good policy work, hopefully, so that they can, make it better. But in addition to that, I think that there's a lot of things kind of outside the box, things that the city and the department can do to make us kind of a shining example. A lot of departments, pretty much all of them, have a basic, this is how you handle somebody accused of sexual violence or harassment. But there aren't many who have a very detailed, very specific, bullet points. If this happens, you do this, this, and this. International Chiefs of Police and In Violence Against Women International both have very comprehensive, very, very good policies that are already written that departments can, tweak a little bit as they need, but they, you can immediately implement them. So we are hoping that the department and Mayor Cooper will be willing to put that in place, so that Nashville has a very specific policy that other departments across the country can model. Secondly, we are looking for a second avenue for employees of the department to be able to report any sexual assault or sexual harassment or racism, gender disparity, anything like that. And it's my understanding that Community Oversight Board can already take reports and investigate allegations. So we already have, an agency or apparatus in place that can do this. So again, I hope Mayor Cooper, Chief Drake, the Metro Council, that they, take this opportunity to make Nashville, a shining example of how to deal with these very complicated problems, and put policies in place and have an outside agency if employees don't feel safe going within, so that we can ensure that, not only that they keep the community safe, but they keep each other safe as well.
That's some really good points. And just for those who are listening around the state of Tennessee, Nashville has a community oversight board, which can look at some of these complaints if it's within a certain time period. Greta, I want to thank you for coming on today. This has been a great conversation we're having. Can someone email you here at silentnolonger10@gmail if they want to get in touch with you?
Yes, ma'am. They sure can. And we'll get in touch with them just as soon as we possibly can, help in any way we can.
Great. So if you are in this type of situation, whether it's with the Metro Police Department or with a police department or with someone else, you're a survivor and you want to connect with this group or for help, or you want to participate in the advocacy, please send Greta an email, and she will help you, put you to work depending on what your desires are. And I'm really delighted to meet Greta. I'm telling you, Greta is a hard worker and does not play. She is on it. And so I really appreciate her. And definitely, she is somebody that has passion for this issue and passion for people. And I'm so glad that she has inspired us today with her story, that she took this horrible thing that happened to her, and now she's doing something very wonderful to help people. So I'm so grateful, Greta, for your life and your work here. And we're going to say it together, passion for, before we say passion for Tennessee, I've got to let everybody know that it is time to request your mail-in ballot. So if you are eligible, request your mail-in ballot. And yes, the Supreme Court has said that having COVID-19 or an underlying condition of COVID, or if you take care of someone with COVID or who has an underlying health condition as defined by the CDC, you can request a mail-in ballot. You are qualified under the definition of hospitalized illness or disability. So we're going to have more information coming out about that on my Facebook page. And I just want to let you know, we're going to say it together, that we have
passion for Tennessee.
Sometimes you're a little off sync, but we all right because we got passion. Thank you so much. You all don't forget, and the last day to request an early voting ballot is October 27th. Great. And early voting, not early voting, that to request a mail-in ballot is October 27th, and early voting starts October 14th. Everybody have a great Saturday.